You alluded to this a minute ago, but it's a truism that the UN staff can do a certain amount. They have a certain amount of authority, they have certain financial resources, and they can do so much. But generally speaking, in order for the United Nations programs to be successful, you have to have the involvement of a large number of member states, or at least critically important member states. And a lot of people are suggesting now that, especially with countries such as the United States sitting on the sideline, not actively involved in the Human Rights Council, that this is not boding well for the success of the Human Rights Council. Why should the U.S. and any other country that's not participating but could really make a major contribution to this be involved?
I would certainly very strongly urge that all countries should be involved. I think the United States has every reason to be proud of its record in the past, including at the time of Eleanor Roosevelt, in the early days of the establishment of the United Nations, the conference in San Francisco and so on, and the contribution that experts from the United States at all levels, including government experts, have made to build up what we have. And now is the time to re-engage fully in ensuring implementation, because as you say, it's no sector alone, it's not the UN officials and high commissioners, etc. alone. It's not governments alone. It's civil society as well. And one of the good things that has happened is we've also extended responsibility for human rights, appropriate responsibility, to the business sector. There is a special representative of the Secretary General, Professor John Ruggie, who has a mandate that has been renewed. And he has found that there is a responsibility on all corporations to respect human rights. And he'll be fleshing out in the next 2 or 3 years, and we'll be working with him, what this means in practice. It's not the same as the responsibility of government, but it is a responsibility. So all of these elements can work together in a multi-stakeholder way of improving. I sat on a commission recently called the Commission on Legal Empowerment of the Poor. It was independent, but actually we met here in the United Nations, supported by UNDP. And we have a report which has come out called Making the Law Work for Everyone. And the law doesn't work for the poor in most countries. It doesn't work for the informal sector. In the poorest countries, maybe 80% of the population is outside all of this apparatus of law and institutions. That's not acceptable.
Most assuredly. I believe that was the one that former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright was involved in, plus several other high-ranking people, and focusing attention on a large number, something like 4 billion out of 6.5 billion people basically fell through the cracks, which is totally unacceptable.
That's right, and that's why we need to re-engage. I think we've all realized in our post-9/11 world the importance of rule of law, of upholding standards, and of making law and justice accessible to everyone. Think of the millions of children who are born with no registration of their birth, no identity. How are they to cope and get jobs and be good citizens? So we have a range of issues to tackle, and it does need the leadership of all countries, big and small. And I certainly hope that we'll see the United States in the future living up to that strong human rights value system that it played such a part in.
Now, if we could shift from the United Nations to your group, Realizing Rights, I think you're involved in this group, and I know you're involved in it. What exactly is it? What does it do? And what are you doing with the elders? I'll give you 3 questions at once.
Well, I'll answer them relatively briefly.
Right.
We're kind of pioneers in showing that there's a practical relevance to the guarantees about rights to food and safe water and health and safety and education, etc. And we have a lot of focus on African countries, but you know, the lessons are global. And we're showing that if you approach health from a human rights perspective, then you'll have a better health system and it'll work more effectively for everyone. That if you educate girls, you have much more rapid development in countries, and it has a whole impact, economic impact as well. That business must play its full part, as I said, in a business responsibility. And about 18 months ago, I got an invitation to join a group called the Elders. Of course, I didn't think I was eligible, but there you are. And I was very honoured to be invited, because it was Nelson Mandela himself and Graça Machel, his wife, who were inviting. And they were saying, we want a small group to give a kind of moral leadership, to go to the places where the worst violence occurs, to be on the side of those who are marginalised and invisible, to be very close to young people. As elders, to listen to the youth in the world today. So many young people feel an anger and a frustration that they're not heard, that they're not understood, that the system doesn't work in a way that enables them to bring out their full potential. We've met several times now. We met very recently in South Africa and helped to celebrate Nelson Mandela's 90th birthday. And we had a lunch with him. And he reminded us again that we must be humble, that we must listen, and that we must amplify the voices of those who don't feel that their voice is heard.
Well, this is certainly a very important project. And of course now the elders, did you not launch a project, Every Human Has Rights? You might mention what that project is. And also, well, we'll go through that first.
Yeah, that's right. The elders decided to take the Universal Declaration of Human Rights as our kind of living constitution. And we noted the 60th anniversary. And we knew that as a few elders, we ourselves couldn't do anything effective, but we had asking power. And we asked a whole lot of organizations, Amnesty and Save the Children and UNICEF and others, to join with us, ActionAid, the GCAP, the Global Call for Action Against Poverty with Oxfam and all those organizations. And nobody said no. And for the last year, during the whole of 2008, we've had a campaign which you can find at www.everyhumanhasrights.org. And that's been a wonderful link, because now next year we want to focus more on women's rights. And the elders will want to link with all of those groups that are trying to make a difference, trying to live the Universal Declaration in the way that Eleanor Roosevelt urged that we do, in small places, invisible, but where human rights must matter.
And of course, every human should be interested in human rights because they affect us. We have them, but what people do to us, for us, or against us, whatever the case might be, certainly would tie into this. And if our viewers would like more information on this, they can go to your website, or they can go to www.un.org, or they can always Google Human Rights Council on Human Rights, or any of those will get you to the United Nations site. But let me ask you in closing, why is it important for us, we who live in Frankfurt, Kentucky, or Frankfurt, Germany, wherever it might be, why is it important for us to learn more about human rights and to be aware of what is going on, not only within our communities, but within our nation and around the world?
I think I would just ask everybody to just go through a brief imaginative exercise. Imagine if we had fulfilled the rights that are guaranteed. Article 1, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. That no family went hungry with children crying, going to bed at night. Every 5 seconds, a child today dies of hunger or related causes. 30,000 children a week. It's a silent tsunami. 30,000 children a day. We've got things, our priorities are so wrong. Think of the military budgets. If we could convert part of that into implementing the human rights that we guaranteed in principle, we would have a safer, happier, more secure, more together world.
President Mary Robinson, thank you so very much for a very interesting and a very informative program.
Thank you.
I'm Bill Miller. Thank you for joining us on today's Global Connections program.